I'm working with the School of Management, AIT School of Management, with Dr. Roger, adjunct faculty, and I help with the other programs, including the Executive MBA program.
Good. Thank you, Sam. Other people would like to say hello, who is in this room? Yeah?
Hi, my name is Aman Ratnasegosin. I am HR Director of CRM Material System. I'm here in order to learn more about AI and also to seek for whether there is opportunities to work with AIT in order to develop my staff. Not only like something that we are like as a company we are looking for, and more choice for us for people development.
Good.
This is what my objective here.
Wonderful. Very good to hear that. Good. Thank you. The two gentlemen at the back.
Hello everyone. I am doing my own business and graduated for 5 years already. And my business is inspired me to start my startup business. It's a freelancer platform. Yeah, because I use this service a lot in the past. That's why I see a lot of pain point as a gatherer that I'm facing. And now here because I want to learn and train digital marketing, digital business.
Good. Thank you very much. Excellent.
I come
together. Okay. Good introduction. Okay. Fantastic. Well, I make it about 1:25 Bangkok time, and I think that I would like to go through and get things started. I can see that we've got a few more people that have joined us online, and others will join us as we go ahead. Just in terms of structure for today, each panelist will spend about 5 minutes introducing themselves and their relationship to digital transformation. As they are talking, I would like you to think about potential questions, either those of you who are online or those of you in this room, questions that you would like to ask, because we have around about 55 or 50 minutes to do Q&A. If you don't ask questions, I've got about 10 on my notepad that I can ask, and I'm sure that would take up a lot of time as well, okay? But without further ado, maybe we'll start with the people in this room, and then we'll move on to people who are actually joining us via Zoom. But you can see from the television screen over here, these are the panelists, and every one of them will introduce themselves. And we'll start off to my right-hand side, and Shrong.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Jerome Kanjanapum, and I come from a non-digital industry, which is building material. So I'm probably one of the few businesses. So a quick introduction of myself. Can I get the first slide?
I think as we maybe wait for this might take a few seconds to get to, and I don't want to have dead air time. So maybe we start off with Nick, your English name, but Kun Sutibon, if you can go through and just give a brief introduction to yourself.
Hello everyone. You can call me Nick. Still last name Kanakahorn. I'm the CEO of a fintech company called Blockfit. It's about 3 years old. So I'll tell you more about like my first experience that start off together with my career back in 2000. I was working in San Jose, California, the Silicon Valley at that time. And at that time, we have something called business process management. Right? It's the kind of dark age, I would say, but I'm not in management. You can probably tell me more, but we were making software, like the very first prototype on an early stage of the software. So at that time, the business process management was not fully digitized, or you don't have the software to help to do the workflow. So we made that, but unfortunately, the 2000, the dot-bomb hit, so the company got hit really hard. So almost dissolved the company, but I get to see the software that I work with Intel, that they were using it successfully to digitally lay off people, or you would say fire. And ironically, it's very successful for them. They can fire people, like 500 people or something, at really low cost. So this is kind of maybe dark humor, you can say that. And so now cut back to another company in 2009 that I started called Nutanix. So the Nutanix is the infrastructure company, but the one that we realized that we help is shorten the process of IT. At that time, even though the hardware is basically used by IT department to be the storage and computing together, even though the IT itself is supposed to be very modern, but the buying process or the bidding process is way in the dark age as well, or you can say it's more like analog. So the software can do many things, but one thing that helped the platform help is that instead of the IT having to buy to sign up for 3 years in order to buy hardware and estimate the capacity that they need in advance, the technology let them buy more like small Lego piece, and then they grow a little bit by bit. So it helped shorten the process and took the company took out by storm. So later on, the company went public on the Nasdaq. So now back to Thailand. I've been back to Thailand about 6 years, and I start fintech company about 3 years. So one aspect that we did was of the software is pure digital bank software. So and the transformation is the next software generation that the bank can purchase, and it's more doesn't have to be a bank, but it could be non-bank that want to provide bank-like service. And traditionally, even you have software, but when people digitize, they digitize the process, and they never really think about how do you do the new one properly. So you just automate the analog process into a digital process, but you still have the same process. So in order for digital bank software to work properly, and I'm not talking about just the software, typical digital bank software, is that you have to think about everything new. For example, in banking, you always think about reconciliation. Someone has to generate the report, and the report is generated from 2 sources and matched, and traditionally it's done by human, even though you have the bank software like K-Bank or something. So, but if you really want to transform, you have to design the bank to not to reconcile, for example. Or you think about other aspects, like why do you need to have cash? If you have cash, what's going to happen to your branch? You're going to have to have people that count the money to manage your cash, to manage your deposit, and on and on. But once you decide that maybe your bank or your non-bank doesn't really need cash, you get rid of it. You may reduce the business, but you can really transform your business that way by having lower costs, for example. Another one that I got involved is something called loan origination system. This is, you can see clearly on the digital transformation here. The loan origination system is typically written by the something called risk management people. And they usually write more like paragraph, or sometimes I call it novel. It's on and on. And then that thing is sent to people who have to approve the loan. So they have to memorize the whole thing and decide when the loan comes in, whether they should approve the loan or not, based on the rules or the law that written by the risk management people. So that one, once you able to digitize the whole document into the digital form, into the form of decision tree, using typical decision analysis tool, then you don't need the complexity of the loan officer or the people who approve the loan anymore. They can just run the criteria that the loan should be approved or not into the tree, and then the tree would generate the outcome as approved, automatically approved, automatically this not reject or recommended, reject, recommended, approved. So that's probably sometime. Do I still have more time?
That's your time for now. You'll have more time later to answer the Q&A. We now have Shrung's slides, I think, up and ready to go through and show the audience. So Shrung, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Roger. So just briefly through my background. So you can see from the screen, I did my degree in computer engineering and subsequently an MBA, both in the state of Oregon, great state out in the Northwest. And a few short-term qualifications from London Business School, IMD and INSEAD. So I come from what I call the traditional bricks and mortar business. So I started my career in Unilever in the ice cream and detergents category. So if you ask me anything about frozen food and how to wash clothes, I'm very good at that. And then I moved across into many diverse industries with Coca-Cola, Royal Dutch Shell, AkzoNobel, which is actually ICI Paints in the past, Tesco, which is one of the largest retailers around here, and an interesting business called G4S, Security Services. So we basically catch bad guys. We do security service, electronic securities, and even cash transportation. We actually transport cash between banks and ATMs, and we don't like when digitalization happens because our business goes down with the cash transfer. And I currently run Siam Gypsum Industry, which we made plasterboard, which is basically dry walls and ceilings from gypsum-based material. It's a joint venture between USG Boro and Siam Cement Group in Thailand. So I have a lot of general management experience running business like in Shell, AkzoNobel Paints, G4S, and my current job in Siam Gypsum, which covers Thailand and surrounding export regions in Asia. So I'm also a part-time guest lecturer and an arbitrator at the Thai Arbitration Institute at the Court of Justice. Okay, next slide, please. So how did I start my digitalization journey? A long time ago, back in 1996, just before the big 97 crisis, economic crisis, which we call Tom Yam Goong in Thailand. I started using funding from 3 major shareholders around the Thai business, started Thailand's first multi-party loyalty program, which is called Smart Bonus. It's a smart card, which is actually a very leading edge technology back then, back in 1996. And basically, you collect points when you go buy stuff. So you go to fill your gasoline, you go shopping, you use your mobile phone, your credit card, everything, every point goes into this card. So you collect points through 12 partners around and use that to redeem for rewards. So it's probably about 20 years ahead of its time. So that was my first experience in digitalization and basically what we call knowing our customers, which is what we call now big data CRM. So that's the start of my journey. So after running all these companies, we use a lot of digitalization work in what we call social media marketing in various mainstream companies, until I joined the security service industry in G4S, where if you look at manned security, it's gradually being replaced by electronic security services. So instead of having 15 guards, you go down to 4 with a lot of surveillance equipment around your premises. So that's more the 007 type of digitalization and face recognition and voice recognition, all those technology. So my current industry, which I run, revolves around building materials, plasterboard, and we're gradually moving into what I call a customer centricity scheme, which digitalization enables us through technology to understand the needs and the buying behaviors of our customers better. And it's a very highly competitive environment in both the B2B and a B2C environment. So that's my journey of my digitalization. Thank you, Roger.
Thank you very much. Next up is going to be Tim. Tim is joining us from Hong Kong. And if we can go through and unmute these so we can share the screen, Tim can share the screen now, please. So Tim, once you're ready, once we see your slides, it's over to you to give your introduction. Thank you very much.
Great, good afternoon all.
We just need to see your slides. We can't see the slides at the moment. So I just need to share the screen. And then Tim is starting his, Okay, Over to you,
Hey,
Tim.
good afternoon all. My name is Tim Edmonds. I'm one of the directors here at Weave. For those who haven't heard of Weave, Weave is a management consulting firm that focuses on simplifying and digitizing supply chains. So we really sit in between the demand and the supply side of the business. We specialize in lifestyle, fashion, and consumer goods products. Our head office is in Hong Kong, but we also have strong offices in Vietnam and Singapore, and we operate all around Asia, predominantly with the clients that you see on the page. In terms of where we like to spend our time, it's mainly on manufacturing, sourcing, and retailer sectors. So it's around planning, strategy and operations, and also digital enablement. So we go deep on production, on sourcing. We do get involved with front-end design of product, buying and merchandising, and then also the back end as well, so warehousing, logistics, etc. The one thing that makes Weave Consulting slightly different is that we have very good access to intellectual property through our parent group, TAL. So TAL, one of the world's leading manufacturers in the apparel sector, but they've also got very good advancements in terms of made-to-measure technologies and vendor-managed inventory programs across the world. So where our digital journey can add a little bit to the conversation is that recently we created a study throughout the industry, and we spoke to a lot of people to really try and give some practical tips for brands that are looking to start that digital journey. So we interviewed over 110 executives. We then went deep with 30 odd industry leaders. We spent some time doing research, as well as leveraging off the experience of the parent company and our own to create this white paper here. So I'll get Roger to leave the details of the white paper so that everybody can have a look after the session today. In terms of what 3D is, particularly for lifestyle and for consumer goods, I thought I'd spend a little bit of time, but really the value add for us is in supply chain resilience and also in creating competitive advantage. So what does that mean from a product development side? What that is very much around a lead time reduction or sample reduction or improving your sustainability efforts. On a sell side, it's very much around what you can see and what the customer can see. Behind that, you get significant advantages as a business, behind inventory reduction, and also making sure that you're making what the customer wants to see. So in terms of findings from the survey, we're going to open up to the panel in a minute, but I just sort of wanted to give you the highlights to finish off. The first is around, don't start with a technology, start with a business need. The most successful companies that we've seen are trying to solve a problem, whether that be lead time or whether that be inventory. The second part is start small and make it iterative. What we found was that over a third of decision makers do not understand the implications of what 3D has on the rest of their business. So start small and bring the business in. The third part is around leveraging your capabilities from within. What was really interesting is that 78% of people who invest in technology, they spend less than 10% of it on training. So there's no surprise that there's a gap in skills. The fourth point, be realistic with your timelines and your expectations. A little bit of a concerning fact that was 30% of companies expect a return on investment to be less than 12 months. If you think of any business change model that is going to evolve over time, you generally don't expect to flip your business in under 12 months. So we need to be realistic with our investment and our timelines. And the final point, before I hand it back to Roger, is in order to get scale, you do need to think about your total value chain. And this is where you need to get your executive team to really come on board and help drive. Why? Because in the lifestyle game, the brands are the ones who predominantly get all the advantage. So working with other people in the value chain, your raw material suppliers and your vendors, is going to be crucial in order for you to digitalize properly. So I'll hand it back to Roger, and we're looking forward to speaking with you, having further questions.
Thank you very much, Tim. I'm now going to pass over to Spencer. He's playing slides, but he's also going to attempt a video. So this is quite a daring operation for us today. So Spencer, could you go through and share your screen, and we will let you know very soon if your video can be heard and seen. Okay? So Spencer, over to you.
Thank you, Roger. Last time I tried, it locked me out. So if I disappear, just don't be surprised.
Then
I'll try it.
Okay. So if you could just share your screen, thank you.
It works.
It does work at the moment. Okay.
Does it work?
It does, yes.
Okay. Yep. So because I don't have a very long journey, I just worked in 2 companies before I started this company. My name is Spencer Dunn, CEO of Dorobot. Before funding this robotics and AI company, I was actually working in JP Morgan and UPS. So it's more from investment and logistic background. And then after UPS, I got promoted back to Asia Pacific, and then I started this company. Basically, it's still very much working for the scenario that I used to work in UPS. So this Dorobot company is very much focusing on leveraging AI and robotic technology to automate many of the process in the warehouse. So from loading, unloading, all the way down to in the middle is sorting, transportations of many of the packages, or, today is the Double 11. So you can imagine how many packages is flowing through the network. So we actually helping supporting all this volume, getting all the way down to the customers. So all the other personnel is used to be my boss. Today they're still my boss. We are working happily to trying to transform the industry from both, of course, digitalization and automation perspective. So the company, as what I described a little bit, is actually started 5 years before. We started from Shenzhen first, used to work in Atlanta, so we actually have an Atlanta office supporting all the North American customers. We also have a footprint in Australia, which is in Brisbane, working closely with Queensland University of Technology. Fortunately, we become one of the tech pioneer in the World Economic Forum. We also one of the CB Insight AI 100 company. We got supported by YF Capital, who is actually I would say the main role today. Started the Double 11 festivals, Alibaba. We also got investments from UPS. So a little bit, let's try the video. I'm not sure it will work, but let's see. So this is some of the applications that we've been launching into the industry. After the production, they are they used to use people to palletize all the products on the pallets, and then before exporting to, for example, Europe or the US. Today, we use a robotic arm to capture all the image from the conveyor belt first after production, and then load it 180 SKUs onto different pallets, and then use AMR, which is more like autonomous driving of forklifts, to put it into the optimized position, which is more optimized from the data from warehouse, where to put it so that when you're exporting into each of the container, it would be the most efficient. So it's both, I would say, in the physical side, it's using robotic to deal with all the operations. But on the cloud side, there is a lot of data flow for us to optimize as well as to help make the decision. So we actually working both to kind of making everything in the warehouse become 100% decision making by AI and 100% operated by robotics. This is one of the conceptual map that I was talking about. Basically, in the warehouse, from unloading all the way to loading, in the middle of it, sorting, transportations, we have solutions to deal with all of it. We work mainly in the e-commerce, express. So if from digitalization perspective, it's more dealing with, for example, in one package company, they have 20 million packages per day. How do we actually allocate each of them with limited resource? So this is basically what we do. It's both, you know, making decision with digitalization and also execution by automation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Spencer. Okay, last but not least, we'll have Adrian in Yangon. Adrian, if you could share your screen now and give your introduction.
Yep.
Good, we can see it, yeah.
Great. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adrian, and I'm the CEO of VillageLink. VillageLink is basically an agriculture technology startup based here in Myanmar that is working on digital transformation solution for agriculture stakeholders, particularly the smallholders, and also customized digital solutions for agribusinesses and other organizations that are engaged in the agri sector. So like digital transformation and agriculture is not really, you know, common words that you find together. But nevertheless, we are making daring attempts in Myanmar to bring, you know, transformation to this farmer level so that we can help them increase their productivity. So just to give you a brief context, Myanmar has been going through major transformation across many sectors, but you know the most obvious one will be in the telecommunications, with a lot of people using smartphones already. About 80 to 90% of people are on smartphones, and pretty much everyone is connected to the internet. So however, the story of transformation is not really the same across every sector. Agriculture in the country, of course, has not been changed for thousands of years. We are still relying on very traditional methods. And that is why if you look at the productivity, Myanmar is still far behind that of our neighboring countries. For example, if we look at Thailand, Thailand can produce twice as much, you know, as what we can produce in Myanmar today. So this is what VillageLink is all about. We are trying to empower the lives of farmers by leveraging the mobile penetration and mobile technology. We're the leading ag tech that is using advanced satellite capabilities and our knowledge pool of, you know, agronomists, as well as our business networks to deliver these solutions to farmers in Myanmar. The first product that we want to introduce here is called Tuet Do. It's an app that connects farmers to agriculture professionals, services, and products so that they can get the timely advice they need to overcome their challenges. The main function of the app, of course, is the Q&A, where farmers can post any pictures of their crops or ask any questions about their fields. And we have a team of agronomists that monitors the feed and provide them the solution that they need. We also update them with localized crop prices so that they can use it as a reference to negotiate against middlemen. And we have a whole variety of educational materials that covers a variety of topics, you know, from financial literacy to cultivation methods for different types of crops in Myanmar. But the highlight of the technology that I want to showcase here that we are experimenting with is the image recognition technology. So we're taking the diagnostic a step further, where we are removing the need of human intervention, meaning that, you know, if a farmer uses our app to take a picture of their crop, the AI will automatically diagnose the disease that is present on the crop and then provide the most appropriate recommendation. We've also helped design a customized integrated loyalty system for agribusinesses in Myanmar. So that's how we've been monetizing. All the features that we mentioned just now for farmers are free of charge. They don't need to pay anything to use our services. But the way we monetize is through advertisements and also partnerships with agribusinesses. This is an example where we helped digitize the entire supply chain of the largest agribusiness in Myanmar called Myanmar Alba Group. So we helped implement these unique data matrix codes on each and every one of their products, giving them a visibility of the supply chain from the factory until the retailer. And they can track individual packaging up to the consumer level if the consumer scans the product for loyalty campaigns. So using our Treto app, the farmer can just scan a product from OBA, and then he'll be able to validate, if the product is authentic or not. So that's the first thing. Second part is that he can read the description of the product, how to use it, when to use it, and for which crop he should use it. And also it's tied to a loyalty program, so that when he scans it, he is given loyalty points, which he can accumulate in the app and exchange it for more benefits and discounts later in the future. We also have our e-commerce capabilities, where we are selling agri-input products and services, which we deliver right onto the farm location. Right now, it's being operated as a cash-on-delivery basis because payment gateways and payment systems are quite immature in Myanmar's market. But farmers can place orders on products, and we are able to deliver these right onto the farm location. And of course, we help our agribusiness clients understand their customer base better by helping them collect all the necessary information about their customers. So by far, this agri platform is the largest in the country with more than 732,000 downloads, and we have already addressed more than 52,000 farming problems in the platform. Another product that I want to touch here is called Village Link Satellite Services, which is a software that integrates remote sensing data from different satellite technologies. So the technologies here are weather analytics, crop monitoring, and land monitoring. So different from the existing weather prediction openly available APIs, we take it a step further for farmers by giving them personalized advisory to the farmers, meaning based on his location, where he is at, and what he's growing, they receive very specific advisory, and this is automatically programmed, and the AI will recommend these weather advisory services to farmers. And crop monitoring, farmers are able to view their crop performances as against to their neighbors, so that they know how well they are doing, and if there's any problem, they can take preventive actions or creative actions to improve their productivity. And lastly, for land monitoring, of course, it's more of classifying different land uses in Myanmar, and also assessing impact of severe weather conditions. For example, for flooding, we can actually pinpoint which farms are affected and by how much they are affected. And these can be useful for government level strategic planning, as well as financial institution companies. So all of these are aggregated into a single package, where businesses can subscribe to and receive this information and use it to improve their operations. So that's pretty much what we're doing in Myanmar. And thank you. That's all for my introduction.
Okay, thank you very much, Adrian. And that's the introduction of the panelists here today. And I now welcome questions for the remaining 45 minutes or so that we've got, either from people in this room. If you are in this room, we do have a microphone at the front here that should be able to pick up your voice, but you do need to talk quite clearly and quite loudly if you're asking a question from within this room. Those of you joining us online, could you go through and actually provide your question via the chat box? So I'll be looking at the chat box and passing that question on to the panelists. Do we have any questions from this room? Sam?
I've got several, but I'll ask one. Okay, so thank you so much, Adrian. Can you hear me?
He's nodding. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So we were just over lunchtime talking in the group about how some startups and that have been around for a short time or even a longer period than a couple of years or so, how they're actually not making money. And I look at this amazing array of ideas and amazing technology that's being implemented almost on a daily basis. But how do you, for instance, monetize and commercialize your model? One, of course, is providing support to the local, the local community and the local farmers. But secondly, how do you maintain longevity as an organisation that will grow? And of course, you need income and you need revenue and you need to grow, and maybe also offer your knowledge base and your ideas overseas as well. So how do you monetize that? What's in the plan? What's your scenario moving forward?
So I believe the question is addressed to me. Yes, the way we monetize is right now our main revenue is solely through partnerships. So because we have a large group of farmers in our platform, it gives a lot of organizations access to these group of farmers, and given that rural communities are harder to approach compared to urban communities because they live quite far from each other, and they're all widespread all over the country. And the value that we bring is that we aggregate them into a single platform, so that if you have any information that you want to deliver to people, you can use our channel to do it, and we monetize it by allowing them this access, right? So there are advertisements where different agribusinesses will promote their products and services. If they do it, through traditional media like billboards and posters, it's operationally expensive, but doing it in our app is much more cost-effective, cheaper, and faster. So that's what we offer to different clients. A lot of our clients today are more of INGOs. They actually have their objectives, to deliver literacy, to promote some education materials using digital platforms. And since we have already built the platform and activated all their target audience for them, it's just a matter of them publishing their information, and we charge them for allowing that access. Another main strategy that we're working on is building customized digital solutions for different agribusinesses or organizations. For example, we help build this system for our agribusiness client, where they can promote their products by making the farmers scan their products and collect points. And we charge them like one-time fees, to help them design this system end to end. And another example is building traceability system for certain NGOs. They want to track the farmers' performances in terms of crops, the outputs, data collection, and we're helping them build different tools for them to be able to manage these.
Okay, Adrian, there's another question for you in chat box. I'd like you to spend your time to read it. I'll share it with the rest of this room in a few moments' time. As you're looking at that and thinking about the question, I just want to know if any of the panelists have any thoughts about this, because it's kind of a general question you could answer as well. So anybody in this room that would like to answer the question that's out? Any ideas that you've got about commercializing? Or Tim? Oh, sorry, sure.
Okay, just a bit of history. Did something like this back in '96. Didn't last very long. We went through a lot of cash burn, but this was back in the '90s. So at the end of the day, I know where Sam's coming from, because these kind of ventures, depending on the timing, you do need a revenue stream and an income stream. And there is a limit when you make a profit or you don't make a profit. And I think this is where the challenge for a lot of startup companies is, how do you sustain the profitability of it? I mean, my experience lasted about a year and a half before the US dollar and the Thai baht crashed from 25 to 50 baht. So that actually wiped out a lot of my loans that I took on. But I think this cash burn question is very valid, because over lunch we were discussing, I can't name the brands, but we were discussing two companies who are still running at a loss, but they are really, really selling a lot in the Thai market.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else who would like to answer that question about commercializing? No, not Tim?
Just, sorry.
Yeah.
Just as a continuation of this, interesting also with what Adrian is saying, because one of the things I was reflecting on as well is bringing, technology, and I mean, there's a clash of cultures, right? So there's got to be a high level of training that needs to take place to what is a very, very traditional way of life. And of course, this is sort of passed on from generation to generation, particularly when you're talking about, you know, a place like Myanmar, for instance. And I wonder whether there is any intervention from, you know, positive intervention from the government to be able to support programs like this, particularly with startups like, you know, a local who really wants to help the, you know, the local farmers, and whether there is any, you know, support, financial support that you might get or seek from, you know, the local government.
So Adrian, as you consider that question, everybody in this room can now see the question that came in on the chat box about internet literacy with reference to example from India. Maybe Adrian, you can take both of those, and then I'll get a question where we can get everybody else to answer. Okay.
Internet literacy, it's extremely important for your product to be successful. Myanmar is quite fortunate in that sense, because once the smartphone penetration took off in the country, a lot of people are familiar with the popular social media platform, Facebook. So a lot of our users are actually Facebook users, and they are familiar with how this sort of social media works already. So we just take a page from Facebook in designing our app, so that they don't really need to do that much of a, you know, relearning about new apps. And then when we launch our app, it's actually quite intuitive for them to come into our platform and start using it immediately. I think it will be much harder in countries where smartphone penetration is low and people are not that much familiar with social media platforms. It will be much harder to implement. I think the other question was about, what was it again?
Sam, would you like to rephrase your question?
Yes.
Adrian's just answered the second question on literacy.
Government support.
Yeah, government support.
Government support, yeah. The Department of Agriculture in Myanmar is extremely active in making sure that farmers have access to these digital tools. Every time they do road shows, or every time they do farmer trainings, or even extension services, they always introduce all these technologies from different startups, not just one, to the farmers. So they play a big role in helping us to the numbers that we have.
Okay, thank you very much. Other questions, either on the chat box or from within this room? Before we go back to Sam for your list of questions, I have a list of questions here as well. Thank you very much. Okay, let's yes.
I saw one of the Jim's slide mentioned about training internals training.
Yes.
He said if he could elaborate on it, could you
Okay, Tim, you heard that question.
Yeah, Roger, can I just get you to repeat it? Sorry, it was a little bit broken.
Internal training. How do you do internal training of digital transformation?
Yeah. Capability building for digitization actually requires a number of different elements of training. What we actually found during the study was that although people don't invest much in the study, successful companies are the ones who reskill and they train their people from within. So in terms of being able to change that mindset that we need to change people to introduce digitization, I think that might be slightly off wrong. We do have the right talent within the business, and your question is about how do we do that? And I think that there's a couple of key points around the training that needs to be. The first part is around getting the team who will be doing the process involved in setting up that process. That's step one. This cannot be an innovation team. It cannot be an external party. It needs to be the team who's going to be doing the job. Then once you've got the process sorted, then you start to work on the technology and the soft skills that are associated with the technology, not the hard skills. Hard skills are going to take time and are important to get. But the one thing that I will add on capability building is that generally an initiative like this requires our best people. Normally we give all our projects to our best people because they're the talent. What we need to be careful of when we go into a digital model is that we allow them that time to explore. So if you don't have that last element of actually freeing up the busy people's time to understand it on their own, then I think that that's probably the missing piece that a lot of people don't factor about when it comes to building and training. Hope that answers the question.
More or less, yes. Okay, good. Thank you, Tim. Then a question for everybody else. If we're not looking at internal training, but you're looking to recruit people from outside the organization, where do you look for? What are you looking for, and where do you look? Who would like to start off answering that question? So if you're looking for people who are good at digital transformation, at digital, where do you look? What skill sets are you looking for? Where do you go to, apart from AIT?
I was going to say AIT.
I was just going to say this is a great setup, right?
Yeah. It's a leading question. It's a leading question. It's illegal in court.
So, I don't know, maybe Spencer, would you like to start off? Where do you look for people with these type of skill sets? Spencer.
Yeah, so first, of course, is AIT, right? So, yeah. We actually have 3 way of channels of looking for talents for digitalization. First part of it, of course, is from very good schools, like for example, AIT in the US, we work very much with Georgia Tech or Stanford or MIT. In Australia, we work closely with ANU as well as QUT. So for those schools, they always cultivate very good talents for our area, especially. Secondly, I think there were already many leading tycoons in this area, like for example SAP, or used to be IBM, today maybe Google or Amazon in the cloud side, which encourage many things going to the clouds, and as well as all the optimization work up to the clouds. So industry, I think they are pretty much leading. I think the third area today, if you're looking at if very much specifically for application, I think mainland China is very much leading all the applications, in that perspective. I think technology-wise, like US or Europe is very much advanced, but when it comes to apply it into industry very quickly and then get into many generations of products, I think in many companies in China, like Alibaba or as well as JD.com or Meituan, very good model for cultivating all those kind of talents as well. So as a small startup like us, we of course work with all those partners, as well as follow some of the talents from those talent pools to actually make our ways into new digitalization and automation as well. So.
So I would like to separate into 2 aspects. One is the people that want to do the transformation, and typically I need the customer that they have to want to make the changes first. So it usually like within like Tim said. So it has to be someone who want to lead the transformation. So once we partner with that, we can supply the technologies and then bring the people that understand the business as well to talk to customer side. Another part that you still I found it's difficult to find is the actual implementation on the implementation on to transform business into digital business. So this one you need a lot of developers, and it's not enough in Thailand. So for me, I outsource to various countries like India and use expertise of the expat that come in and work from Thailand. So it's quite challenging.
Thank you. And Shuang?
From a business viewpoint, as a user, it's very challenging getting people in digital transformation. I mean, being a baby boomer in my generation and going after millennials or Gen Z, it's very difficult to get the right profile who actually fits into a big corporation like ours. And what we tend to do is we actually look for what we call corporate entrepreneur. So basically a corporate entrepreneur is an entrepreneur who likes to do startup, but they're too chicken to use their own money to do a startup. So they join a big company like ours or within the group to get the funding, but also have the skill sets to actually do a startup. So within our group, one of our shareholders within SCG, we actually have an incubation firm where we provide funds to startup companies, and they come in and they hold 49% share. We do 51, and they go off and invest and do startups. So those are the kind of things that corporates that are bigger or traditional corporates would do to get the skill sets into this journey.
Thank you. Then Tim or Adrian? In terms of where do you look for people who've got skills in digital? Where do you look?
Yeah, I think when it comes to getting different skills from a consulting point of view, we generally look for people who have got industry experience and then are generally post MBA. But I think there needs to be something in there around curiosity. So you can't necessarily write that down. I don't necessarily look for people who have a set track record within the industry. I generally look for people who ask good questions. So when it comes to recruiting talent, I don't believe there's such a thing as generational gap. I think there's a difference in terms of asking good questions. So for me, it is more about the person's skill set and what they've previously learned, but how does that make them ask really good questions? So when it comes to actually recruitment process itself, we used to have a colleague from Thailand. We actually got him straight out of business school, but it was his ability to ask good questions from a different perspective that really made sure that he got through. So for me, being able to access talents, it doesn't matter where the person comes from or the industry or their background. For me, it's about wanting to ask good questions and be a part of something different.
Thank you. Adrian.
I think, in my opinion, it's also quite important to look for people who had quite experience in leadership skills as well as communication skills. So when it comes to digital transformations, some organizations tend to overlook these issues because you might have the greatest idea in terms of, what sort of technology to use or what sort of technologies to bring into the company. But then if you're not a good communicator, if you're not good at convincing different departments to be on board with you, then your transformation story is not going to be successful. So in our group of companies in Oba, we look at technical capabilities, but we looked at more of his communication skills as well as leadership skills, I think, which are also key factors in ensuring the success of digital transformation throughout the enterprise.
Okay, thank you very much. So that's one question, round of responses from the panelists. Anybody else that would like to ask questions from either within this room or on Zoom? If not, I'll ask Sam to ask the next question.
I was just giving everybody else a chance before me taking over again. I've got a question for Spencer. It was a very interesting video, Spencer, and thanks very much for your presentation. In terms of productivity gains, what have you been able to help deliver in terms of productivity gains, having these robotics installed in organisations? I'm assuming you're already commercialising your your technology. So can you give us some sort of an idea in terms of productivity?
Yep, because it's a very general question, so depends on the scenario, the number will be different. So I would just give some example. For example, for some of our pure AI module that are used to actually optimize the loading algorithm. So it's a furniture company. They export around 3.2 million TEU of furnitures out of China to globally. So they will have different kinds of shape of furniture. How do you actually put in the furniture into the container, considering the weight, considering the dimension, actually also considering how to actually drop off sequence in Europe or in the US become a very complicated problem because they export so many of them every day, right? So they have to actually have people familiar with that problems to deal with it, and then some forklift driver to actually execute it. So in that scenario, we use pure AI to calculate that kind of algorithm. It's more like a cubicle, game. We successfully actually optimized 12% of the space usage. You can actually calculate what would that mean, right? In ocean container shipping, 12% of the global trading volume, that would be kind of like save the space, would be a very great number of efficiency. Another case is at the video you look at the palletization, and then we use forklifts to actually put the product into the right location, which also optimized by the AI. In which port should you put that product so that when you're exporting, you have the best sequence to put it into the container. In that, they used to have at least 6 people to do the palletization, at least 10 people to actually drive in the forklift to put all the, the pallets after palletization. Today, you can see we use free robot to do it. It can also work 24 hours. You actually have 2 times of production than the people used to do. And it also saves half of the time to export because it's already optimized into the best location where we put the pallets before exporting. So that would be another case as well. So for many of the cases, we successfully improve the efficiency or cut down the costs by 2 times, or at the most extreme cases it's actually 5 times. Not to even calculate it, they work 24 hours. We just literally putting into the same timeline, and then the robot working with digitalization optimized sequence would actually have better traffic than people working separately without synchronized all the message in the workflow. So that's actually a very good question because it's a merger of digitalization and automation. Pure automation cannot achieve that. So.
Follow-up?
Follow-up question?
Did you have a follow-up, or I'll go back to my list? No, Sam has a follow-up, yes?
Well, actually, that's something that I wanted to implement when I was running an organization a few years ago because of the human element, right? Which takes me to this next question, of course. And not that I'm interested in your response, but I mean, when you can get rid of 10, 15, 16 people in the warehouse, and you can reduce your cost by, of course, increasing the productivity as well. That's a huge plus. It's probably, I'm not sure whether it's heaven or hell for an HR director, but it's probably heaven because you don't have people complaining about back pains and pay rises. But then where do those 16 people go? You know what I mean? So that's of course that's a big question. And I'm not necessarily asking, the panel to answer this, but it's always interesting because, of course, in the main session we were talking about this. What happens to the shift of the human element? Where does that go? Where, it's very easy to say, well, okay, they're going to get another job somewhere, but you know, it's a challenge. That's all. So it's more of a comment rather than a specific question, because I wouldn't want them to answer that one.
Well, if anybody does want to answer, then do so now. If not, there's a question on the screen. So
I'll take a quick jab at it.
Okay.
So this is about the decision tools that we made and found out that the risk analyst people usually there's 6 figures and typical bank would employ about 20 something the small bank. And in this case, they would need 3 or 4, but they can say they use those risk people to create new product. For example, they can create new loan product or product instead.
Okay, so there was a question that's come through on the chat, and it's kind of linked to one of the questions that we've been talking about as panelists previously about how do you start if you either don't have a plan or you have had a plan. This question here is about a master plan for a particular industry. What advice would you have for, I guess, developing that master plan? What's your first step, and how do you then follow a plan for digitalization? Who would like to start with the answer to that question?
I'll start with the simple one.
Okay.
Educate the management first on digitalization. That's actually your biggest challenge, because speaking from experience, if you go to a boss who doesn't understand this and you're trying to sell a project to them, they kind of look at you and say, what is Instagram? What is Twitter? To give you a very contrast example. So I think for the first step is the education of the executive team, starting with the CEO. It's critical to get things rolling. And I think that's speaking from experience.
Good starting point.
Take a course at AIT, of course.
Okay. So yes, we can dwell upon that and pause there for a few seconds just to reflect on what AIT has got to offer. But maybe we can move over to anybody else that would like to talk about this. Tim?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in and sort of add on to Trong's point. And I think this kind of links back to Sam's question as well, to some extent, because if you're talking about an overall master plan and how do you get started on a master plan, then there's actually really 2 components overall to that. The first is the whole what, why, how situation of where do you want to be in the future? So why are you in industry as you are? And that does involve, as Trong pointed out, a significant amount of education around the business. But to sort of add on to the strategy piece and why do we need to do it, so like an industry study or see where things are going, you need a futurist to talk to. I recommend you actually start significantly simpler than that. And that is really about, think about the pain points that you're trying to address within your business. So having an overall master strategy or a general direction can be something as simple as being more customer centric within the next 5 years. Or it can be reducing lead time from 60 days through to 2 days delivery. That's where your strategy or your master plan needs to come from. Because if you don't go for that customer centricity, or you don't go for a problem that you're trying to solve, then really what you're doing is you're leaving too much in the hands of the strategy gods. Now, none of us are that great at forecasting that we can predict what's going to happen in 1 year's, 2 years, 5 years time. So you're better off with starting something around a pain point, something that's quite tangible and that you can go after. Because you shouldn't be trying to start with a digital solution and work out a business case to get there. You should be working about how can you solve a problem, particularly one that involves around your customer. That should be a part of your strategy and your master plan, and that will generally take you off in a general direction. So I would encourage people to sort of think about that. You don't need to be a futurist. What you do need to do is think practically around how am I going to grow sales? And if growing sales or our business direction is going this way, how do I solve that problem? Don't try and overcomplicate the world of virtualization or digital transformation, because you can see from the panelists on the discussion, all very different, not necessarily viewpoints, but different parts of the customer journey, and everyone's got a different view. So you need to think about how, as a business, what are the key problems that you need to solve for your customers going forward? So I welcome others to add to that.
Who else would like to add to that? Adrian? Spencer?
I completely agree with Tim. Usually you don't want to have a separate digital master plan just for the sake of doing digital transformation. It should be part of your larger company vision or business vision, you know, to deliver value to your customers or to improve your operations. I think, you know, once you have your business master plan being set up and you have certain objectives to be met, technology can become one of the strategies or one of the methods to achieve those objectives. And that's how you should start, instead of trying to fit, you know, digital transformation into the picture by force. That's something that, you know, happened previously in the company that I used to work for. The business vision and the digital transformation vision were separate and they were not aligned. And it was a bit hard to implement because there were a lot of pushback from, you know, different departments. So it has to be quite natural and it has to fit into with your overall business objectives.
Okay, then either Spencer or Nick Sutipong, who would like to go?
So I'll offer a alternative version. Sometimes probably not to answer Khun Chandika's question directly, but in many cases, I don't think good master plan to transform is easier to just start a new one. Basically, you start a new business rather than trying to transform the old one.
Okay, thank you. Adrian, sorry, Spencer.
My advice, I completely agree with you know, all the above, but my advice is to work with us. So I come from a different perspective. Many of the business that we are having today and helping our customers to do all the transformation from digitalization to automation is actually, we are the tech components, right? We have different kind of modules, but we don't know exactly all the SOPs for different kind of organizations or different industries. We work closely with our customers to figure out how to actually merge each of the tech components into their strategy as well as their process. So I think in this case, if you know, this audience happen to have the you know, expertise from digitalizations or automations, that they can work closely first from more like you know, like a consulting perspective first, and then how to actually merge some of the tech elements into their strategy. Testing in different kind of pilots, small by small, I think is good. But at the end of the day, as everybody's saying, is to solve very specific problems, to see what is the ROI, and then to see how do we actually expand the scale of the organization. So that's my advice. Thank you.
Thank you. We have about 10 minutes to go, so 1 or 2 questions left. Thank you very much for that, Chandika. Who else has any questions? I'm looking at Sam. I have one more question myself. Maybe I can start with obstacles. So what are the obstacles to, apart from the mindset that Tim spoke about earlier and finding the right people for the job, what other kind of maybe what's going on around the world, geopolitics, what sort of obstacles do you see there for the world in 2030 to digital transformation, which is the theme of this conference? So what are the obstacles, the big obstacles? It's all gone very quiet from here.
Geopolitics.
I can start a little bit first. I think it's you know, like some of the reality is that many of the tech companies is really academic backgrounds, or with a lot of you know, high level tech, very advanced tech at the beginning. We don't usually have a lot of industrial experience. We don't actually have very good or deep understanding of traditional organization. So when we are saying transformation of digitalization, many ways where we need to actually merge something in the sky down to the earth, right? That is actually the biggest gap, I think, you know, for the research or the tech people to understand what is really happening in the traditional industry. And actually, how do we actually educate or cultivate the idea of workable, as well as all these ROI concept, which is very traditional concept, into the traditional industry that we want to change. That kind of gap, I think, is much bigger than geopolitical or any kind of obstacles that we've met. So fortunately, in the logistic, in our ports, we are familiar with a logistic industry. We're familiar with the personnel in the industry. So we got the channel to communicate all the ideas that we've been working on. And we got the understanding from the industry. So we work quicker, but still, you look at it still takes 5 years, right? So look at all the other areas or industries, we might not be lucky enough to have all those right people to actually bring the idea into that industry. So I think that kind of gap have to be basically bringing very good perfect combination of the people from different kind of background to understand each other first. You know, that's my experience. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Spencer. Who else? Carry on with people on Zoom. Adrian or Tim, in terms of big obstacles.
Yeah, the obstacles that we face, you know, personally are for farmers in Myanmar, they're a bit cost cautious, right? So the cost of mobile data, it's actually a big obstacle for us today for us to be able to achieve scale. So farmers, they are very careful about how they spend their mobile data because, you know, most of the time they're working, and, you know, when they get back to their phones, they rather use it on some entertainment than looking at educational material. So that sort of behavior is really, really hard to change at the moment. So if they have limited amount of data, they rather spend it on watching funny videos on Facebook or TikTok than learning something new about agriculture. So, you know, we have to incentivize sometimes, you know, to encourage them to log into our app and just view a few videos or a few articles, and rewarding them some mobile data for doing that. And also, we're talking to telcos to see if we can come up with special pricing for farmers so that they'll be able to browse our apps at a cheaper rate, and hopefully that will improve the metrics. On the other side of things, you know, when it comes to the government level, we try to pitch the satellite solutions to the government that, you know, if you use our data, you don't need to do that much of on-ground data collection, because the satellite will tell you where different crops are located, how many acres of this crop are grown, what are the performances, and you won't be needing that much of workforce to help you collect the data, and satellite data will be much more accurate. They do understand the values of these, they understand the technology quite well, but the challenge was that they have their own self-interest, meaning, you know, they don't want to make any drastic changes to the organization, where they, you know, if they use the technology, that means replacing people. And with the election happening, you know, they rather have people on board with them than, you know, replacing them with technology. So they straight up said, you know, as cool as your technology is, we don't want to use it today because it's going to affect some of our extension workers. So that sort of obstacles are still there, you know, at government level, and even in organization level, some departments have their own self-interest and objectives that they need to meet. And if your digital transformation is going to disrupt, you know, those, then they will definitely object any transformation that you are going to bring for them.
Okay, Tim.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, because thinking about mainly what we deal with, which is high labor industries, there's a couple of problems that the industry is going to face, or actually are already facing today. The first one is that cheap labor countries are running out. Right? There's only so many places around the world where you can keep chasing cheap labor. The second one is that manual industries or high labor industries they're nowhere near as attractive as what they were for our parents' generation or the generation before that. Upskilling people is tough. Getting people to stay in the industry is tough, so retention's high. So all of these add quite a lot of stress or issues in the system. One way to go about resolving this is through making your processes a lot more consistent. And Spencer's an absolute 100% perfect example of that, of using automation to take out different parts of your process, because it may have been a huge expense in the past, but now through the use of automation, how more cost effective can that be? And the second part is about end to end. So people talk about localization is going to be a big trend in the coming 5, 10 years. I'm not so sure that'll actually be the case. Particularly with high labour industries, I think we're going to see an increase in automation, but I don't think we're going to see a massive shift in terms of countries. Why? First of all, from a profitability point of view, shifting some product manufacturing to some countries is just not going to make your business viable. The second is thinking about where a lot of your raw materials to make those products are coming from. So there is an interesting discussion to be had there around localization, but I would encourage people to think about it more in terms of consistency or automation around their processes. And then probably second of all is think about their end-to-end value chain and how can you make that more profitable.
Thank you very much, Tim. We've got about maybe 1 minute each for you to answer this question. We've got 2 minutes to go.
Okay. So in typical large organization, they don't make cohesive decision, and it affects on the transformation. Example of big bank that I have worked with, some unit who want to make the mobile advert and resell, or they consider mobile experience very important, but at the same time, the back-end people said you need to make the good API first, and then they fight for the people, and that's not enough developers.
Okay. Well, the big obstacle from a professional employee, not an owner of a company, is the short-term pressure to deliver quarterly profits and earnings, which sometimes, overpowers the need to go for the longer-term strategy and the longer-term transformation, because you're always pushed for quarterly profits, which, forces management to actually do certain things, which is good short-term, but in the longer term, it could be detrimental to the business.
Okay, thank you very much. So we've attempted something today, which is a little bit unusual. And a year ago, we'd never have dreamt of doing this, where we have half the panelists physically here in the room and half, or slightly more than half, away in Shenzhen and in Hong Kong and in Yangon. So I'd like to thank the panelists for their time today, for their inputs, for their insights. For those of you joining via online, those of you who are here in this classroom, I feel that the technology has worked out pretty well. So Spencer, your video worked really nicely. So I'm really happy to go through and see that. For those of you who would like to see the closing session, the technicians in this room are going to now show you the closing, the panel that's taking place in the large lecture theatre. So if you're joining this Zoom session, you want to see the last 20 minutes of the conference, you can keep on with this Zoom link and you can go through and watch that. Those of you in this room, if you want to go back to the closing ceremony, that will be starting in about hopefully 5 minutes time, as soon as this panel has finished in the main auditorium. I believe there might be tea and coffee still outside the auditorium, is that right? Hopefully there is tea and coffee outside there. So can we try and do a kind of a clap our hands to say thank you so much for the panelists today and everybody for joining us. Thank you very much.